Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zhang, and today we'll be going over the math homework for Class P. This is for session U24. So for the first page, you have to compare two quantities in two different columns. You choose A if A is bigger, B if B is greater, C if it's only if they're equal, and D is if you can't tell. So for number one, you have two triangles, and from this piece on the bottom left, you know it's a right triangle. And because we know it's a right triangle, you have some special right triangles here. The one on the left is a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle because you know that the sides fit this ratio of x, 2x, and x root 3. So here the hypotenuse is 2 times one of the legs, so that means that this is a 30, 60, 90 right triangle with the 30 here and the 60 over here. And x is equal to 4. 8 is 2 times x, or 2 times 4. And that means that this x has to be 4 root 3. So this is a 4 root 3, 8 special right triangle at 30, 60, 90. The one on the right is a 45, 45, 90 right triangle, or an isosceles right triangle. And these follow a ratio of x, x, and x root 2. So in this case, the x is 4. And the hypotenuse is going to be 4 root 2. So what you're really comparing is 4 times root 3 versus 4 times root 2. And here, root 3 is greater than root 2. So we know that column A has to be greater because the 4 is the same. So the answer is going to be choice A. Next, for number 2, you have this equation x minus 2y in parentheses times x plus 2y in parentheses, and that's equal to 4. And one thing that you can do here is just to distribute using the FOIL method. So that's first, outer, inner, last. That's a way for us to distribute 2 times. But when you distribute, you have to remember to include a sign. So first you have to have x times x, which is x squared. Then x times 2y, which will be plus 2xy. Then the inner term is negative 2y times x, or negative 2xy. And finally, the last is negative 2y times positive 2y, which is negative 4y squared. So the middle 2 will actually cancel out, and what you end up with is column A, and that's equal to 4. So you know that 8 has to be greater than 4, so the answer is going to be choice B. Next, for number 3, you're given the info that a certain recipe requires 3 halves of a cup of sugar and makes 2 dozen cookies, so dozen is equal to 12. For number 4, column A, you have the amount of sugar required for the same recipe to make 30 cookies versus 2 cups. So if you know that 3 halves cups, or 1.5 cups, is going to make 2 dozen cookies, or 24 cookies, what you can do is to actually go down to a unit rate to get 6 cookies, because 24 plus 6 will be equal to 30. So to do that, you have to divide by 4. And when you divide 3 halves, or 1.5, by 4, you can do keep, change, flip. And do 3 halves times 1/4, because the reciprocal of 4 wholes is just 4 over 1, or 1/4. That's going to give you 3 over 8. So 3/8 cups will be equal to 6 cookies. And from here, you can add these two together to figure out that 30 cookies will require 3 halves plus 3/8 cups. So 3 halves and 3/8 has the LCD of 8. So I have to multiply by 4 over 4, which will give you 12 over 8 plus 3 over 8. It's going to be 15 over 8 cups. and that's 1 7/8 of a cup, which is still less than 2 cups in column B. So the answer is going to be choice B. Next for number 4, power station is located on the boundary of a square region that measures 10 miles on each side. 3 substations are located inside the square region. For quantity A, the sum of the distances from the power station to each of the 3 substations versus 30 miles. So here you have a square that's 10 miles on each side. And a power station is located somewhere in here. Specific is on the boundary, so near the edge. Now you want to figure out the substations that are located inside the square, and you want to compare that to 30 miles. So one thing that you can do is try to maximize the distance. So the biggest distance you can get in a square is the diagonal. So if the station is on one side, the 3 substations can be really close to the opposite end, and that means you have to end up adding 3 really long distances that are close to the diagonal, which is really the hypotenuse of this 45, 45, 90 special right triangle. Because when you split a square in half, you have a 45, 45, 90, or x root 2 triangle, so this will be about 10 root 2. So the maximum distance will be 10 root 2 times 3, or 30 root 2, which is going to be much greater than 30 miles. Now, the minimum distance is if they're really close, and of course you can put the station on one corner, and the substations can be really close, so really close to that station. So it can also be less than 30 miles because it can be, all within a mile. So the minimum distance can be less than 30 miles. So what that means is that you can't really tell. Sometimes quantity A is bigger, other times quantity B is bigger. They could also be equal. So the answer is going to be choice D. Next, for number 5, you have this inequality. 6 is less than x is less than 7, and you know that y is equal to 8. You want to compare x over y versus 0.85. So you know that y is equal to 8, and x as the numerator, you don't know what x could be. So x could have a maximum of 7, and x can have a minimum of 6. Even though you can't include them, you can actually use this inequality to solve for all possible values. So because you know that 6 is less than x is less than 7, if you divide everything by 8, you get x over y, which is 8. X over 8 is really x over y, and that's going to mean that it's going to be between 3/4 and 7/8. Now 3/4 is 0.75. And 7/8 is 0.875. So here, 0.85 lies in between. So x over y could be 0.874, but x over y could also be 0.76. So sometimes x over y could be bigger. Sometimes it could be smaller. If it's this, it could also be equal. So here, again, you have choice D. You can't tell. Here's the summary for this first page. Next, for number 6, O is the center of a circle, and the perimeter of triangle AOB is 6. So here you know that O is the center of a circle, which means that OA to OB has to be equal, because OA has to be equal to OB since they're both radii. And the radius are all equal. Now, so you know that triangle AOB has to be isosceles, or at least isosceles, which means that the two opposite angles, these are the base angles. also going to be equal. Now, since we know that the two base angles are equal and the whole triangle adds up to 180 degrees, that means that 180 minus the 60 is 120, and 120 divided by 2 is 60, which means the other two angles here must be 60 and 60. So this turns out to be an equilateral triangle. And once you know that a triangle is an equilateral triangle, this means that all sides are equal. So that means that each side has to be 2, because the total has to be 6. So because the radius is equal to 2, you can find the circumference, which is 2 pi r. It's going to be 2 times pi times 2, or 4 pi. And 4 pi is about 4 times 3.14. And that's greater than 12, which is 4 times 3. So in this case, it's going to be choice A. So we had to use a couple of facts here. A triangle adds up to 180, and the radii of a triangle that are, of a circle that are all equal. The two base angles are the opposite angles of the two equal sides. They're always equal, and an equilateral triangle has all sides equal as well. So once you solve for this, you can then substitute in. Once you get the radius, you can substitute into the circumference and compare the results. Next, for number 7, the standard deviation of a set of 5 different integers, each of which is between 0 and 10. And then the standard deviation is a set of 5 different integers, each of which is between 10 and 20. So standard deviation, it measures how spread out the data is. Now, you have the minimum and maximum, but you don't know how condensed the data is. It could be all concentrated or really compact, or it could be spread out between this entire range. So here the answer is D. You can't figure this out. There's a formula to find a standard deviation, but you don't have any of the numbers. You have to find the average and then take the distance between each of the numbers and that average, and find the average of those distances, and then do the square root. That would be the standard deviation. So you can't really do that here, but you do know that standard deviation, just by the definition, measures how spread out the data is. You don't have any data to measure. So in this case, it's going to be choice D. Next, for number 8, you have x is greater than 1. So then when you compare these two quantities, you have to use the laws of exponents. So when you have power to a power here, b to the a raised to the c power, that's going to be to the a times c. So that means you'll have to multiply this 2 and 4, which will be equal to x times x to the 8th power. And then afterwards, you can use the law of exponents, b to the a times b to the c. It's going to be to the a plus c. And here there's an invisible 1. When you multiply two exponents with the same base, you have to add the exponents. Be x raised to the 1 plus 8, or x to the 9th. Now on the right, this is just the first law of exponent that you have to apply. This will be x times 3, x raised to the 3 times 3, or x to the 9th. So x to the 9th is equal to x to the 9th, so the answer is going to be choice C. Next, for number 10, you have x not equal to 0, and you want to compare the absolute value of x plus the absolute value of negative 2 versus the absolute value of x minus 2. So you don't know what x could be, but in this case, the absolute value means that if x, the stuff inside this absolute value, is greater than or equal to 0, the absolute value of x, which is equal to the number itself. But if x is negative, then the absolute value of x will be equal to the negative of x. You have to negate that negative number to make it positive. So absolute values will turn negative numbers positive. Now x can't be 0, so you don't know what x is, but x could be equal to, let's say, 2. So in column B, this will be 2 minus 2 with the absolute value of 0. It just be 0. But in column A, this would be the absolute value of 2 plus the absolute value of negative 2, or 2 plus 2, which is equal to 4. So in this case, column A could be greater. On the other hand, column B might be greater as well. If you try making, let's say, x equal to negative 2. So now the absolute value of negative 2 plus the absolute value of negative 2 will be 2 plus 2, or 4. And on the right, when you have the absolute value of negative 2 minus 2, this will be the absolute value of negative 4, or 4. So in this case, both of them are equal, so this would be C. So because you can't have A and C as the answer has to be D. You can't tell. Sometimes they're equal, if x is equal to negative 2. Other times, column A is greater, if x is equal to positive 2. So the answer here is D. Okay, and here is the summary for this page. Next, for number 10, you have the system of equations 7x plus 3y is equal to 12, and 3x plus 7y is equal to 6. If x and y satisfies the system of equations above, what's the value of x minus y? So here, you want to solve for x minus y, and normally would solve this system of equations by doing substitution or elimination, but notice you don't have to solve for x or y individually. You just want x minus y. And when you have this symmetry between the coefficients, you can actually just subtract these two equations. So 7x minus 3x will be 4x. 3y minus 7y will be negative 4y. That's equal to 12 minus 6, which is 6. And from here, you can factor out a 4. And that will give you 4, and in parentheses, you have x minus y, which is equal to 6. Then once you divide by 4, you get that x minus y is equal to 6 over 4, or 3/2, choice B. So for number 10, you actually didn't have to solve for x and y individually because you only wanted x minus y. You notice the symmetry with the coefficients. You can actually do a shortcut this way. Next, for number 11, you have to select all the answers that apply. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle A is 25 degrees. The measure of angle B is greater than 90 degrees. Which of the following could be the measure of angle C? So you have triangle ABC, and A is 25, but B is greater than 90. So this means that this is an obtuse triangle. So you want to figure out what angle C could be. So you know that 25 plus B plus C has to be 180. So if you subtract 25 on both sides, you get that B plus C has to be equal to 155. But you know that B has to be greater than 90. So it's greater than 90 degrees. So if you subtract 90 from both sides, you know that C has to be less than 65. So since C has to be less than 65, because B is greater than 90, but they have to add up to 155. You go through all the choices. A, B, C, and D could be possible. E is impossible. Because if you have angle C as 70 degrees, then angle B would be 155 minus 70, or 85 degrees, and that is not obtuse. That's a acute triangle. Next, for number 12, what's the least integer n such that 1 over 2n is less than 0.001? So you can rewrite 0.001 as 1 over 1,000, because this is 1 to the thousandths, 1,000ths. And that makes it a little bit easier. In order to have 2n, 1 over 2n less than 1 over 1,000, that means that 2 raised to n power has to be greater than 1,000. So here you can just find multiples of, find exponents of 2 that will be greater than 1,000. And to get there, you have to actually raise both sides to the negative first power. So when you raise both sides to negative first power, you also have to flip the sign. And when you have b raised to negative 1, this is 1 over b to the first power. So raised to negative 1 power means reciprocal. And when you do a reciprocal, you gotta flip the sign. For example, 1/2 versus 1/3. You know that 1/2 is greater than 1/3, but when you flip this around, 3 is greater than 2. So to figure out the power of 2 that's greater than 1,000, you have to do 2 versus 2. 2 squared is 4. 2 cubed is 8. 2 to the 4th is 16. 2 to the 5th is 32. 2 to the 6th is 64. Then to the 7th is 128. Then 256. And 2 to the 9th is 512. But finally we get to 2 to the 10th, that's 1024. So n has to be at least 10, choice A. Next for number 13, in the sunshine, an upright pole 12 feet tall is casting a shadow 8 feet long. At the same time, a nearby upright pole is casting a shadow 10 feet long. The lengths of the poles are proportional. The shadows, are proportional to the heights of the pole. What is the height in feet of the taller pole? The keyword is proportional. So you have the pole versus the shadow, and you have the tall one. So the tall pole is 12 feet, and the shadow is 8 feet. And that's going to be equal to the short pole, which is casting, or sorry, in this case, this is actually the longer pole. And its shadow is 10 feet, and its actual height is x. So we just cross multiply here. 12 times 10 is equal to 8x, and you can divide by 8. And that means you can divide top and bottom by 2, but cross canceling, and 12 and 4 cancels again. So x is going to be 3 times 5, or 15. When you cross simplify, choice D. Next for number 14, if A is the smallest prime number greater than 21 and B is the largest prime number less than 16, then A times B is equal to. So prime numbers, they have exactly 2 factors. Just 1 and itself. So if A is the smallest prime number greater than 21, A must be 23. 23 is the next prime number. And B is the biggest prime number less than 16, so 15 isn't prime, and 14 is not prime, but 13 is. So the answer is going to be 23 times 13. And that's going to be choice A, 299. Next for number 15, the total amount of Judy's water bill for the last quarter of the year was $40.50. The bill consists of a fixed charge of $13.50 plus a charge of $0.0075 per gallon of water used in a quarter. For how many gallons of water was Judy charged for the quarter? So you have to turn this word sentence to a number sentence. So the total for the quarter was $40.50 for this quarter year, or these 3 months. This is equal to fixed charge. This is the slope, the y-intercept, rather. And you want to add the variable rate. And this is the slope. And this is 0.0075 times G, where G equals the gallons used. So to solve this equation, you would just have to work backwards, subtract 1350 from both sides. That would be $27 is equal to 0.0075 G. Now, this 5 is in the 10,000s place, so this is really 75 over 10,000. And this is going to be equal to 27. And this 75 and this 100 can cancel out to form 3 and 4. So this is really 27 is equal to 3 over 400 G. And to solve for this, you can multiply both sides by 400 over 3. And 3 and 27 cross cancel to form 9. So 9 times 400 will be 3,600. So that would be 3,600 gallons of water. Next, for number 16, you have two lists, R and S. The median of the numbers in list R is how much greater than the median of the numbers in list S. Keyword here is median, and median is just a middle number after ordering from smallest to biggest or biggest to smallest. So for R, you have to organize them first. And you just start canceling out, 27's in the middle. For list S, you cross out and 19's in the middle. So how much greater is your key phrase, which means subtract. So you want to do 27 minus 19, which is equal to 8. Choice A. And here is your summary for this page. Now questions 17 to 20 are based off of the following data. So you have this bar graph here. Now for 17, the two corporate sectors that increased their support for the arts from 1988 to 1991 made a total contribution in 1991 of approximately how many $1 million? So there are two sectors that increased their support for the arts. And this is what the title is. So there are two that increased. These two. So you want to see in 1991, how much money did they make or contribute? So the finance, insurance, and real estate made a 26% increase. Whereas for services, we want a darker one because that's for 1991. And the second is 22%. Now the total for 1991 is 520 million. So the 26% plus 22%, and this is equal to 48%. So what you need to take is 48% of this 528 million, which represents the total in 1991. So your equation is for 1991. These two sectors contributed 48% of 520 million. And now you want to figure out how many millions of dollars they gave. So the final answer will be in 100 millions. And then you have to round. So here you can turn this percent into a decimal or a fraction. Either way is fine. This would be 0.48. And because you want your final answer in millions of dollars, you'll be rounding to 10 millions. You can just multiply by 52 and then just add the 7 zeros. Okay, so this will give you 2496, but then you have to put the 2 decimal places from 24.96. But again, you have to move the decimal 7 places to the right because there are 7 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the final answer is going to be 249,600,000. So 249,600,000. Now, when you round to the nearest 10 millions, you look at the 10 millions place, specifically to the digit to the right, which is a 9. So this tells you to round up. And because you round up, you have to add 1 to the 4. So the final answer is going to be 250 million, but then to bubble it in, you only have to approximate how many millions. So to figure out how many millions, this is equal to 250 millions. So the answer is going to be 250, because you're putting the final answer in terms of millions. Next for number 18. How many of the 6 corporate sectors listed each contributed more than 60 million to the arts in both 1988 and 1991? So you want to figure out how many of these contributed more than 60 million in both years. So more than 60 million is going to be your basis. So one thing that you can do to figure out the percentage, because you don't want to take the percentage here for each of these, you can figure out what 60 million represents. So for 1998, the total was 630. So 60 million over 630, that's going to be the fraction that you want, and you want greater than this fraction. And then in 1991, you have 60 million over 520 million. So these are the 2 fractions that you need to solve for. So for the first one, it's 6 divided by 63. For the second one is 6 over 52, or 3 over, sorry, you can't. All right, 3 over 26. Okay, so from here you can just do some long division. So for the first one, 6 divided by 63. So 63 goes into 600. You can estimate about 8 times. So that's 504. But then if you do 63 times 9, that's even closer. So it's going to be 9. So 9 times 63 is 5, 6, 7. And when you subtract, you get 33, and then you put another 0. So this would be 0.09 something percent. And we see that for 1988, the white boxes, you have 17, 31, 19, and 20 to be more than 9%. So this is going to be, you want something greater than 0.09 or 9%. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4 from 1988 that were greater than the 60 million. But then you also want to figure out for 1991, this 3 over 26, so you need it for both. So for 3 over 26, you can divide. Let's go exactly once. The 40 is also ones. So this would be 0.11 or about 11%. So you also want in those 4 years, which one had more than 11% in 1991? And that's 22 is greater, 20 is greater. Retail doesn't work because it dropped. The second one is only 8%. And then other is also more than 11%. So you have services, manufacturing, and other. So it's going to be choice C, 3. So the key here was to identify that the 60 million is the part and that the whole is going to be the total for 1988 and 1991. And then you have to go through the chart and identify which sectors had both columns that were greater than this 9% for 1988 and 11% for 1991. And in this case, we saw that the service sector, manufacturing, and other fit the category. Retail doesn't work because the second bar is only 8%, not greater than 11. Next, for question number 19, from 1988 to 1991, which corporate sector decreased its support for the arts by the greatest dollar amount? So here you want to decrease between 1988 and 1991. So if you look at the bar graphs, you see that manufacturer decreased, retail, wholesale, and also other. But the two biggest ones that you want to compare is probably going to be manufacturing and retail because they decreased a lot. So manufacturing is going to be one of them. And they went from 31% to 20%, but you have to look at the dollar amount. So you want to compare 31% of the 1988, which is 630 million, versus 1991, you have 20% of 520 million. So both of these numbers will be a little different. You can do some estimation here because 31% is about 30. So that's going to be 3/10 of 630, which is 0 cancels out. And you have to do 63 times 3, which is about 189. And then for 20% of 520, that's 1/5 times 520. That's going to be 520 divided by 5. That will be 104. So it went from 189 to about 104, which is a decrease of 85 million. Then you want to compare that to the retail, which is from 19% to 8%. But again, that 19% is of 630, and the 8% is of the 520. So 90% is about 1/5. So I want to compare 1/5 of 630, which is really just 630 divided by 5. That's going to be 126. And then 8% of 520, that's about 10% of 520. It's going to be 1/10 of 520, which is 52. So 126 minus 52 will be 74. So this was a close one, but minus 85 is bigger than minus 74. So the answer is going to be manufacturing. Choice B. So for this question, you have to be careful because you want the dollar amount, not the percentage amount. So you have to take each of these percentages and take it with respect to the actual numbers, the total. Next, for number 20, of the retail sector's 1991 contribution to the arts, a fourth went to the symphony orchestras and half of the remainder went to public television. Approximately how many millions of dollars more did the retail sector contribute to public television last year than to that year than to the symphony orchestra? So first, you know that 1/4 went to the orchestra, and that leaves 3/4 remaining. But out of this 3/4 that remains, half of it went to public television. And the other half, you don't know where it went, so you can just say other. So you only hear about the half that went to TV. So that's going to be 1/2 of 3/4, which is going to be 3 out of 8. So that's going to be the fraction. You want 3/8 of the 1991 contribution to the arts for the retail sector. So retail in 1991 That's 8% of this 520 total. So you're looking for 3/8 of 8% of 520. It's going to be 3 over 8 times 8 over 100 times 520. One of the zeros will cancel out. And from here, you know that one of the 8s will also cancel out. And you have 3 times 52 over 10. And here, 52 and 10 are both even. So you have 3/5 of 26. So that's going to be 26 divided by 5, which is 5.2. And you have to do 5.2 times 3. So that's going to be 15.6. That's 15.6 to the TV. And then you have to find 1/4 that went to orchestra. So 1/4 is really just 2/8. So here you already found 1/8. So here you found the dollar amount for 1/5 of 26, which is this 5.2. So between this 1/4 or this 2/8 versus this 3/8, it should be another 1/8. And 1/8 of 8% of 520 is just 5.2. So you can also calculate by doing 2 out of 8 times 8 over 100 times 520. So the same things will cancel out, and this will just be 2/5 of 26, which will be 2 times 5.2, which will be equal to 10.4. So when you subtract 15.6 minus 10.4, which went to the orchestra, the difference will be 5.2. Choice A. So here's a summary for this page about reading this bar graph and percentages. Next, you have to select all the answers that apply. For number 21, the total number of recording titles distributed by the music distributors L&M is 9,300. The number of recording titles distributed by L is 7,100, and the titles for M is 5,200. Which of the following statements must be true? So here, the total of L and M is 9,300, which means L plus M equals 9,300. And L has 7,100, whereas M has 5,200. So if you add these two together, you get 12,300, which is more than this total, which means that there must be an overlap. So some of them distribute both. And to figure out this overlap, you have to take 12,300, the total in which you double count the overlap, minus the actual total, which is 9,300, which would be 3,000. So there has to be 3,000 that goes in the middle, and then the one that are unique for recording the songs that are unique for L will be 7,100 minus 3,000, which will be 4,100. For M, you have to do 5,200 minus 3,000, which will be 2,200. So this will give you the actual total of 9,300. So for choice A, it says more than half of the titles distributed by L are also distributed by M. So the L is 7,100. And the ones that are distributed by M is 5,200. So 7,100 isn't more than half of M. If you actually compare the titles that are distributed by both, it is at 3,000 here. So it's only 3,000 over 4,100. So it's only about 75% of L, but that's not the same that's distributed by M. So you know that A can't be true when you compare these. Now for choice B, more than half the titles distributed by M are also distributed by L. And this one is true because if you look at M, you have 2,200 that are unique to M, but you have 3,000 that are for both. So here, 3,000 is greater than 50% of M, and these are the ones that are also distributed by L. So the answer is going to be B, or B is going to be true. And C is incorrect because 3,000 are distributed by both. So here you just have to do a Venn diagram, and you have to add the totals, and you have something that is greater than the actual total, so that you double counted something, and that's how you can figure out the middle, which is 3,000 titles that are distributed by both of these companies. Now, when you go through all the choices and figure out, which one's more than half, for A, the fraction is 3,000 over 3,000 plus 4,100, and that is not greater than half. This is less than half. Whereas for choice B, when you have 3,000 over 3,000 plus 2,200, this is greater than 50%. For number 22, if C and D are positive integers and M is the greatest common factor of C and D, then M must be the greatest common factor of C, and which are the following integers? So C and D are positive integers, and what that means is they have to be whole numbers. And integers can be positive or negative or even zero, so it could be -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, etc. Now, M is the greatest common factor of C and D. So what that means is M times something will be equal to C, and N times something will be equal to D. So M is the greatest common factor. So if that's the case, that means that both C and D are in the M times table. So if you have M, then 2M, then 3M, then 4M, etc., one of these will be C, one of them will also be D. So let's say, C is 2M, D is 4M. So if that's the case, that means that M must be the greatest common factor of choice A, because if you take two factors or two multiples of M, you add them up, it's going to be another multiple of M. So for example, if M is in the 3 times table, you have 3, 6, 9, 12, etc. If you take any of these numbers and you add them up, it's also in the times table. 3 plus 9 is 12, 9 and 6 is 15, which is the next number. 15 plus 12 is 27, which is also part of the 3 times table. So the answer is going to be choice A, because if you take C and D, which both are in the N times table, you can essentially factor out M. And what you have left is still going to be a whole number. So for number 22, you have to use your definitions of a greatest common factor to figure out that both C and D are in the N times table, and just go through all the choices. You can also model this question using this example of the 3 times table. Next, for number 23, the average or arithmetic mean of the 11 numbers in the list is 14. If the average of 9 of the numbers in the list is 9, what's the average of the other 2 numbers? So here you have to use the definition of average, which is a total divided by the number of data. So in this case, you have the average of 11 is equal to the total of the 11 numbers divided by 11, and that's equal to 14. So from here, you can multiply both sides by 14. multiply both sides by 11 to get rid of the denominator. So that means that the total of the 11 numbers will be 14 times 11, or 154. So all the 11 numbers add up to 154. Now you know that 9 of the numbers, the average of the 9 numbers is going to be the total of the first 9 divided by 9, and that's equal to 9. So here you can multiply by 9 on both sides, and that gives you the total of 9 numbers is equal to 81. So 11 numbers add up to 154, and 9 of the numbers add up to 81. So if you subtract these two numbers, that will give you the total of the two numbers that are remaining. So 154 minus 81 is equal to 73. And this must be the total of the last two numbers. So to figure out the average of the last two numbers, you have to take this total of two numbers and divide it by 2. And that's going to give you 36.5. So for this question, you have to use the definition of average, and you have to multiply both sides by the denominator to get the totals, and then subtract the totals, and then finally divide by 2 to figure out the average of the last two numbers. Next, for number 24, of the 750 participants in a professional meeting, 450 are female and half the females, and 1/4 of the males are less than 30 years old. If one of the participants will be randomly selected to receive a prize, what's the probability that the person selected will be less than 30 years old? So here you have 750 total people, and the 750 is broken out into two groups. 450 are male or female. So that leaves the remaining 300 as male, because 750 minus 450 is 300. Now from each of these, then you can break it down to 30 years or older or less than 30. So half the females are less than 30. That means that the other half are going to be more than 30. So half of 450 is 225. So you have 225 females less than 30 and 225 females over 30. And you do the same thing for the males. 1/4 of the males are less than 30. So that means that 3/4 are 30 plus. So we don't really care about those. We only want the 1/4 that are less than 30. So 1/4 of 300, or 300 divided by 4, is 75. So now you have all the people who are less than 30. You have 225 females less than 30 and 75 males less than 30. And if you add them up, the total number of people under 30 is equal to 300. And that is the part. Because you want probability, this is just part over whole. And the whole here is 750. The total number of people at this meeting is 750, so that's going to be 300 over 750. The zeros will cancel out, and you just have to simplify 30 over 75. Here, if you divide the top and bottom by 15, you get 2/5. So that's going to be choice D. For question number 25, in the xy plane, what is the slope of the line whose equation is 3x minus 2y is equal to 8? So here the keyword is slope, and slope represents the steepness of a line. And you can actually measure this slope, which is represented by the letter m, using change of y over change in x, or rise over run, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now here, what you have to do is actually turn this equation into slope-intercept form. So that's y equals mx plus b, and in this case, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept, x and y are the coordinates of a point. So here you have this equation that's not in slope-intercept form, and in order to turn this equation into slope-intercept form, you need to isolate the y. That means get y by itself. So that means you have to subtract 3x from both sides, and then you get negative 2y is equal to negative 3x plus 8, or 8 minus 3x. And then you have to divide both sides by negative 2. And from here, you can split up this fraction into negative 3x over negative 2 plus 8 over negative 2, which will turn this into 3 over 2x minus 4. So in this case, this is slope-intercept form, and the coefficient of the x is choice D, 3 over 2. This is the slope. So for this question, you have to remember the formula for slope and the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And here is the summary for this page. Next, for number 1, to attend Zan's graduation from Williams College, Rick drove 1/3 of the 1,268-mile drive on Monday and 60% of the remaining distance on Tuesday. To reach Williams College on Wednesday, how many miles must Rick drive? So this college is 1,268 miles away. First, you'll drive 1/3 of the way. So if you drive 1/3 away, that means that you have 2/3 remaining. And from this 2/3 that remains, you have 60% on Tuesday, which means there's 40% left for Wednesday. So out of this 2/3, you'll actually want the 40% that's left for Wednesday. So that means the total is 1260. And out of this total, you want to do 2/3 of 1260, and then you'll have to multiply by 40%. And 40% is 2/5. So this is the fraction that you want to find, and what you can do first is just cross simplify. The 0 and the 5 you can cancel out because the 0 is really a 10. So you have 2 left. And then 126 you can divide by 3 to give you 42. So you're really just multiplying 2 times 2 times 42 times 2. Or just 42 times 8. And that's 336. So that's choice D. You have 336 miles left for Wednesday. The equation that you want to find is 40% of 2/3 of 1260. Next, from number 2, which of the following is closest to the measure of angle A? So angle A here is a little bit more than 90 degrees. 90 degrees would be perpendicular, which means it's 90 degrees. And it's a little more than that, so it's going to be a little more than 90 degrees, and that's going to be choice C. Next to number 3, Gilroy incorrectly converted 4.35 minutes to 4 minutes and 35 seconds. By how many seconds was he in error? So here this 0.35 is really 0.35 or 35 over 100. And the total is actually 60 seconds because there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So here you have to simplify this fraction. You have 35 over 10 times 6. And here, the 6 into 10, you can cross-cancel, divided by 2. And 35 and 5 cross-cancels for 7. So 7 times 3 is 21. It's really 4 minutes, 21 seconds. So if you subtract from 35 seconds, that's a difference of 14 seconds. And that's choice D. Next one, number 4. If building a road costs $175 per square meter, what's the cost to construct a 40-kilometer stretch of this road that is 10 meters wide? So this road is a really long rectangle. It's 40 kilometers. And kilo means 1,000. So it's really 40 times 1,000, or 40,000 meters. And it's 10 meters wide. So the area, in this case, will be length times width, which will be 40,000 meters times 10, or 40 or 400,000. That's the area, and that's in square meters. It costs $175 per square meters. So then you'll have to multiply 175 times 400,000. Here you can just do 175 times 4 to get 700, and then just add the 5 zeros. So that's going to cost 78 million, which is choice D. Next one, number 5, write any 2-digit whole number and create a 4-digit number by writing 19 in front of your number and 19 behind your number. Add your 2-digit and 4-digit number and then divide the sum by 11. From that sum, you want to subtract your original 2-digit number and then divide that result by 21. What is the final answer? So you can write any 2-digit whole number. So the smallest one will just be 10. So you just start with 10. And then you want to make this into a 4-digit number by writing 9 in front of it and behind it. And then you want to add the 2-digit numbers and want to add this number plus 10. And that will be 9119. And you want to divide this by 11. So when you subtract 91 minus 88 is 3. Then you subtract 22 to get a difference of 9. You get 829. To get 829, and you want to subtract your original 2-digit number, which is 10. Get 819. I want to divide 819 by 21. So this will go in 3 times. I'll give you 189, and 21 times 9 is 189. So the answer is 39. So the answer has to be choice C, because it says write any 2-digit number, and it will always be equal to this answer. Next, for number 6, given sets A is equal to 2, 3, 4, and 6, B is 1, 2, and 3, and C is 3, 4, 5, 6. Place the elements in the correct regions of this Venn diagram. What is the sum of all the numbers in the regions labeled P, Q, and R? So here the A circle has 2, 3, 4, and 6. B has 1, 2, and 3. And C has 3, 4, 5, and 6. So Q is the stuff that's common to all 3. And we see that for all 3 of these numbers, or all 3 of these regions, you have 3 in common. And that's the only one they have in common. So 3 has to be inside the middle here, which is in Q. You can cross that out because we placed that one. Now in the area labeled P, that's the ones that's common to both A and C. So the numbers that are common to A and C are gonna, and not common to B, will be 4 and 6. So P would be 4 and 6. So we figured that out. And then for R, that's the numbers that are unique to set B. So only the number 1 shows up here. 2 doesn't show up in B because 2 shows up in B and A. So number 2 will actually be in there. So the numbers in P, Q, and R will be 4 and 6, 3, and then 1. And add everything together, that will be 14. Choice D. So for this question, you just have to read a Venn diagram, and the overlaps are the regions in which the number is common to both. Next for number 7, in a 10-kilometer race, a runner averaged 3.5 minutes per kilometer for the first 2 kilometers. She crossed the finish line with a total time of 41 minutes. For the final 8 kilometers, how many minutes per kilometer does she average? So in a 10-kilometer race, you average 3.5 minutes per kilometer for the first 2 kilometers. So per means every, so that means that 3.5 times 2 means she took 7 minutes. And she ran 2 kilometers. So that means that there are 8 kilometers left. Now she crossed the finish line with a total of 41 minutes. So for the last 8 kilometers, you have to subtract 41 minus the 7 to give you 34 minutes. So you ran 8 kilometers in 34 minutes. So that in order to get the minutes per kilometer, you have to divide 34 divided by 8. That's 4 remainder 2, which is 4 and 2/8, or 4 and 1/4. So it's going to be choice D. It's about 4.25 minutes per kilometer. Next, for number 8, the Congressional Budget Office projects that the total U.S. debt will increase from $6.2 trillion in 2002 to $8.9 trillion in 2014. What's the projected average annual increase in debt for this 12-year period? The keyword here is average, and average is equal to total divided by the number of data. In this case, it will be the number of years. So the total increase will be from 6.2 to 8.9. So 8.9 minus 6.2 will be 2.7. It'll be a $2.7 trillion increase. Divided by, in this case, it's from 2002 to 2014. And that's going to be 12 years. So it's 2.7 trillion divided by 12. So to divide trillion, remember trillion has 12 zeros. So if you move the decimal 3 times to the right, that will be in billion. The answers are all in billions and millions. So we'll divide this by 12. And 12 goes to 65 times. So it will be 225 billion, which is choice B. Okay, here is a summary for this page. Next, for number 9, Anna walked along 2 sides of a 30-meter by 50-meter rectangular field, and Beth took a shortcut by walking along the diagonal of the field. Compared to Anna's route, what percent shorter was Beth's route? Round to the nearest percent. So here you want to draw this rectangle, and there's a shortcut here. So you can go 30 and then 50, or you can do the shortcut, which is the hypotenuse. And for the hypotenuse of this rectangle, it's a Pythagorean theorem, which states that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So here, a is equal to 30, and b is equal to 50. So here, 30 squared is 900, and 50 squared is 2500. which is equal to 3,400. So then to figure out c, since c squared is equal to 3,400, c will be the square root of 3,400, which will be the square root of 34 times the square root of 100, which is 10 root 34. Now from here, you want to compare how much shorter Beth's route was, and percent shorter means percent decrease, which is new minus old divided by old times 100%. So you'll need a calculator for this one because this is an irrational number. The new is 10 root 34. And the old was the 30 plus 50, which is 80. And then you want to divide that by 80 and multiply by 100%. So here, 10 times the square root of 34. You can do the square root of 34 first, which is equal to about 5.83 times 10 will be about 58.31. So if you take this and you divide by 80, or subtract 80, and then divide by 80 and times 100%, this will be about 27%, which is choice E. Next for number 10, the number of intersection points of a circle and a triangle cannot be. So here you want to see if you can intersect it 3 times, and you can if you have a triangle inside a circle. That's 1, 2, 3. Now if you make this triangle a little bit bigger, you can get 4 intersection points, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to get 5, you can make 2 sides a little longer. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, to get 6, if you make the triangle longer on all 3 sides, we get 6 intersection points. So the answer is choice E. All of them are possible. Next, number 11, at Perry's Produce Packers, each pair pairs a pair of pairs every 6 minutes. How many pairs do the 2 sets of triplets pair in a pair of hours? All right, so a lot of similar words here. So each pair word, say person. So just pairs or cutting. Now a pair here means 2 every 6 minutes. So one person cuts 2 pairs in 6 minutes. You want to know how many of these pairs do 2 sets of triplets. So when you have 2 sets of triplets, that's 2 times 3, or 6 people. And you have a pair of hours, or 2 hours. So if you have 6 people, if you multiply the number of people by 6, in the same amount of time, they'll do 6 times 2, or 12 pairs. And that will be in 6 minutes. Now you want to keep the same people, and the next rate that you want to multiply is time. So to go from 6 minutes to 2 hours, which is 120 minutes, I'm going to multiply by 20. If we do this for 120 minutes, you'll also want to multiply by 20. And 12 times 20 is 240 pairs. So they'll cut 240 pairs, and it's the same 6 people. So you can only multiply 2 at a time because this is just proportional rates. And in this case, you'll get choice E, 240 pairs. Next for number 12, for the next 7 years, the St. Louis Cardinals will pay Albert Pujols an average of $14.7 million per year. Now, 25 $20 bills weigh 0.9 ounces, and if Albert were to insist on being paid in $20 bills, how many pounds would the $14.7 million weigh? So here, you need to pay $14.7 million. So million means with the decimal to write 6 times, because there are 6 zeros in a million. So this will be this much money, but you want to be paid in $20 bills. So if you divide by 20, that will give you the number of $20 bills. So helps if you have a calculator here. But I think you can also cross simplify at the end. So we can say for that, 1 to zeros will cancel out. So you have 14, 7, 0, 0, 0, 0 divided by 2. And this is $20 bills. Now you know that 25 bills weighs 0.9 ounces. And that's for 25 bills. So what you can do is figure out, well, one bill will be 0.9 divided by 25 ounces. So you'll have to multiply this by 0.9 over 25. And now this will be in ounces. To go from ounces to pounds, you know that 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. So to go from ounces to pounds, you have to divide by 16. So from here, you'll have to divide by 16 or multiply by 1 over 16. So then you have to multiply that. And from here, you can cross cancel the 25 with this 100 here, or these two zeros to give you 4. And 4 and 16 can cross cancel, give you another 4 here. And this 4 can cross cancel with another 100 for 125. So you'll have 147 times 25 times 0.9 divided by 2. So you can't cross simplify anymore. So you just multiply. So you have 147 times 25 times 0.9 and then divided by 2. You get about 1653.75, or choice A, 1654. Next, for number 13, if x is equal to negative 12, determine the sum of these three numbers. So negative 80 minus 12, x squared, and x over negative 0.15. Okay, so since x is negative 12, negative 80 minus negative 12 will be negative 80 plus 12, which will be negative 68. You're moving closer to the 0. And then negative 12 squared will be positive 144. So you have 144 minus 68. And this will give you 76. And then you have to do negative 12 divided by negative 0.15. So the negatives will cancel out. And then you have to move the decimal over 2 times. So this will be 1200 divided by 15. Uh, 15 goes into 120 8 times. And you get a perfect 80. So you'll add 80 to 76, and you get 156. Choice E. Next, for number 14, from the set of negative 9, negative 8, negative 3, 0, 7, and 10, select 3 different numbers for A, B, and C. What's the greatest possible value of A times B minus C? So you want an order of operations, so you want to multiply first, and then subtract C. Well, to subtract C, you want to make sure that C itself is negative, so then when you subtract a negative, this becomes a positive. And in A times B, you want a really big positive number. So you just guess and check here. To get a big positive number, you could do 7 times 10. And then if you subtract negative 9, this will give you 79. And that is the biggest number here, so that would be choice E. Next, for number 15, if a symbol b is b minus a divided by 2, what's the value of 4 symbol 20 symbol 8? So this is your function notation, and a function just an input-output machine. So all you have to do is plug in the numbers here into this equation to get the answer. So you had to do the parentheses first. So 20 symbol 8 means that a is 20 and b is 8. So that's going to be 8 minus 20 divided by 2, or negative 12 divided by 2, which is negative 6. But you're not done yet, because you have to take this 4 and put it into the symbol, and the second part will be negative 6. So a will be 4 and b will be negative 6. So this will be negative 6 minus 4 divided by 2, which is negative 10 over 2, which is negative 5. The final answer is going to be choice A after you substitute in. Next, for number 16, when this network of 6 squares is folded into a cube, what is the sum of the numbers on all the faces, which include the vertex V? So when you fold this up, this piece will become 2, and then this piece will become this 1. And this vertex will be up here. So then when you fold this over, this piece will become this 16, and this piece will become this 8, and then the top piece will be 32. So this corner will touch 16 as well as 32. So you have 1 plus 16 plus 32, which will be 49, choice E. Next, for number 17, a set of 15 consecutive odd integers or consists of 15 consecutive odd integers. So the median of these 15 numbers is n. The median is just the middle number. What's the greatest number in this set? So you have 15 consecutive odd integers, and if you have the median, this is also equal to the average. It's just the middle number. So the middle number will be the 8th number here, and this number is n. So because you have odd numbers, that means that each of the numbers you'll have to have a pattern of plus 2. And the biggest will be n plus 14, choice C. Next, for number 18, you had to evaluate 256 times this whole big product. Now, one thing you can do is try to cross cancel if possible. So when you look for some patterns here to try to cancel some of these factors out. Uh, 256, you know that 256 can cross cancel with this 2 from 128. And then this 128 can cross cancel with another factor of 2 here to form 19 and 64. And then 64 cancels with this 34 to form 17. And then 32. This 32 cross cancels with another 2 to form 15 and 16. And 16 cross cancels with the 2 in the denominator of this 26 becomes 13. And this 8 cross cancel with this 22 to get 11 and 4. And 4 is really 2 2s. So the next 2 will also get cross canceled to form 9 and 7. So from here, the 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, and 9 are all canceled out. Oh, and the 7. So you really just have 3 times 5 over 10 times 6, or 15 over 60, which is 1/4, or 0.25. Choice D. So you have to just keep cross canceling, and then eventually you'll get 1/4. Okay, here's the summary for this last page. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. All right, bye everyone.